Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. Today it is me, Laura, hanging with you, and today's episode is spicy in nature, and I can't wait to share it with you. And it is that our patients don't need more education. Our clients don't need to be told what to do. We are not experts at all things, and I feel like as the unofficial cheerleader for the nurse coach specialty, I just want to yell it from the rooftops, because I feel like when I wanted to become a nurse coach, I thought that all I needed to do was tell my patients what to do to be healthy, and then they would. And part of that was true. Part of that was true because what got me well ultimately in my own health journey wasn't what I learned in nursing school, and it certainly wasn't what my conventional medicine doctors were sharing with me. So I did believe that I wanted the world to wake up to more lifestyle and holistic and different interventions. And that kind of sparked my journey into nurse coaching. But what I found is that it has the opposite effect. So patient who gets more pamphlets, more websites, more classes, and still feels unheard or feels anxious is not going to heal. So oftentimes we think more education, more information is what's missing in somebody's transformation or health journey, and it's not. It is very difficult to change and to grow alone. We desperately want a partner, especially when we're struggling or when we have a goal that we want to reach. We're desperately seeking somebody to watch us, to notice all of the progress that we've made, to affirm us, to be with us, to allow us to have the feelings that we have along the way without trying to fix them or change them or diagnose them. We long for someone to look at us, not for our pathology or what's wrong that needs to be healed or diagnosed. We long for someone to see what's already innate inside of us, what already exists, what already wants to be expressed. And we want someone to help us liberate that part of us inside of us that has all the answers for ourselves. We are the subject matter experts of our life. Nobody knows how it feels to be you. Nobody knows how it feels to be me. Yet our entire world is based on that. We base our entire perception, our world, what we think the world should be, all of our beliefs based on our own personal experience. And when you're trying to ultimately serve another human being as their coach, that is not helpful. The fact is, it's nice to be deeply aware of your own biases, your own tendencies, to want to be the expert, to want to teach. Give you an example. I have had students who had a family member go through recovery, and they're really passionate about recovery, and they're really passionate about, getting their family members the right help. They have this amazing journey of transformation, of healing, and they want to help other people. And this is so well intended. What can happen, and I did this too early on, is you become prescriptive in that. So you find a client and their husband is suffering from addiction, and you are so excited because you have your ideal client. You're going to help them. You're so invested and excited, and that investment and that excitement comes across as, it's best because you've been through it. And it's in those instances where we have to be so careful to not, quote unquote, educate. We have to be so careful to not assume we know the path. Now, in other situations, healing doesn't begin until the client or the patient feels seen. They feel like they're not judged, and they feel like someone's actually listening to every word that they say and are curious. Magic happens in that curiosity. Magic happens in that void of there being no expert in the room except the client. Magic happens in that relationship. That is a therapeutic relationship. And we've cleansed the therapeutic relationships out of our healthcare system because of efficiency, because of overwhelm, because of culture. And I know if you're listening to this, you know that. It's probably why you're here. You have a sense that, hey, we could do this better. Or maybe you've had your own experience like me of healing where, my God, I suffered for 3 years and I found a doctor that listened to me and offered me something other than medications, and she saved my life. And it was all things I didn't learn in nursing school. And it's all things that we don't do in conventional medicine. And it was all things that insurance doesn't cover. That's a terrible truth. So our patients don't need more education. They need more presence. And I'm going to tease out how this can show up as the nurse life coach. I'm going to tease out how this can even negatively affect your clients when you have a lot of subject matter knowledge on something that they're going through. All right. So what is education? Education is information giving. It is instructions. It is tips. I cringe when I talk to nurses going, I just want to help patients live better lives. I just want to give them tips. They don't want tips. Well, they don't want tips first. Tips, nothing wrong with. Information, nothing wrong with. It just can't start with that. I want you to imagine patient education as water. Water's a good thing. And then I want you to imagine a patient who has not been listened to in 3 years by any of their doctors as a sponge that's 5 pounds full of water. And if you don't take a moment to notice that the patient is full of water and you decide that the only thing to fix them is more water and you pour water on them, they won't absorb it. Nothing happens. And they walk away 5 pounds and soggy. As a nurse life coach, I want you to notice, are they full? Because guess what squeezes that excess water out of them and makes them porous and ready for more information is you listening to them share. Let them give you information. Let them become porous and ready for the tips and the pamphlet and the website and the prescriptions. The only way, if our clients are a sponge, the only way they become porous is if they get to share with you what their beliefs are, what their experiences, what their symptoms are, how it's affecting them, what they want, what they desire, what their biggest fears are. That is how you create an environment where you can pour more water on them and it'll be good water and it'll do good for them. That was a really strange analogy, but I pulled that out of my butt and I like it. I think it works. So you guys are going to be talking to your patients and your clients one day and you'll be like, they are a soggy sponge. Laura was right. I'm going to let them I'm going to squeeze some water out by being present with them and letting them share and get some of this out of them before I try to put more into them. Now, this does not mean that education or information is bad, but it's easy to get. So what I would rather focus on with a client, if I meet a client and I'm like, oh, for them, for their particular goals that they want, this is a skill set problem. This is an information problem. They literally don't have the right information, the right knowledge, the right skills to get the outcome that they want. And it's funny because as a business mentor for 5 years, you all don't have the right information. You don't have the skills. I know I have to pour stuff into you. And yet I find myself doing this as well, that more information is sometimes not the thing. So when it really is an information gap that they need, then I think what I would like to say is the first step is to seek permission. For example, would it be helpful if we spent 15 minutes and you just tell me all the things that you have done? Or do you want to spend that 15 minutes with me sharing some things that I think could help? Either one is okay. Because if they tell you for 15 minutes what hasn't worked, they are more likely to take what you know would work and absorb it into themselves and go implement it in their life. So even if you are an NP or you're a provider and you're listening to this, or you're working with doing PACU, patient education in the hospital, ask them 2 questions before you launch into their patient education. 2 questions about them. And it will land so much deeper because one of our deepest human needs is to be seen and understood. And we're all walking around, so many of us as adults, with that need not being met as a child, not being met as a student, not being met in our relationships, not being met in our jobs. I cannot tell you how people react to this. It's so big. And presence builds trust. Presence is partnership. Presence, emptying the sponge before you pour more water onto them, creates the environment for them to be successful. You will be a more successful coach. You will be a more successful provider. You will be a more successful nurse if you do this, if this is part of your practice. If you give half the information, but more presence. If you notice how full they are before you start. If every patient education thing that you do is more customized. You use their language, if you notice their language, if you match and mirror the way that they speak, If you slow it down if they're slow, or you speed it up if they're fast. If you ask them something unrelated, this is rapport. Some people are magical at this. They just do it by nature, and coaches become magical at this. This is a coaching skill that you learn. And research says that relationship presence and trust and continuity equals better outcomes across the board, 100% of the time. We do not get better outcomes with more education alone. And here I'm going to go with some practical tips. So practical tips would be listening, reflective statements, sitting down with your client, obviously, instead of standing up. And for the love of God, don't interrupt. Now, in our coaching program, we talk about the art of interruption. And the art of interruption inside of a session is so different. We are interrupting in service to, not interrupting to respond. When do you think about listening? Listening to respond or listening to understand? Those are two very different skills. And most providers, most nurses, most everybody all the time, including me, especially in admin work and running the company behind the scenes, I slip into this so much because of efficiency, because I have work to do. I am listening to respond, not listening to understand. It's something that I have to work on. It's something that takes patience. And I know that there's time constraints. And I know that when you're burnt out, you just want to get the job done. And in coaching, we create the environment so that none of those constraints impede our ability to serve. I think that's why we love it so much, because coaching takes away all of the constraints that we've been experiencing in healthcare our entire career. And we get to spend time and presence with human beings, really helping them, forming a relationship that they will remember for the rest of their life, and outcomes that will impact them and their family and their friends for the rest of their life. It is deep, good work. And it cannot be done in 8 minutes in a rush with policies and protocols that have you read from a script. It just won't work. And so oftentimes, nurse coaching is a return to the healer that you thought you were going to be. Now, here's the thing with education and information, and I'm going to give you our framework. And I know I've talked about this a lot, but in transformation, we have your vision. Like when we're talking to a client, we want to know what their vision is. What is their vision? Let's take health, for example. What is their vision for their health? And I'm not talking about, I want to lower my A1C. A vision might be, I want to go to every time I have my blood sugar tested, that when I leave, I feel so good about myself because it's trending in the right direction. My vision is that I become the kind of person who is constantly improving their health and who doesn't dread labs. Who doesn't feel like a failure every time they get their labs drawn. Who doesn't feel like they're constantly chasing this ideal that they eludes them. We want to get our client's vision. How does it look, touch, taste, feel, smell? What does family and friends say about it? We want to go underneath the why. We want the bigger, the juicier thing. We want our clients to say, I want to be alive for my grandchildren's high school graduation. I don't want to burden my children with terrible health. I want to be a productive member of society serving other people as long as I possibly can. And so that is why I don't eat this. And this is why I eat this. And this is why I move my body. We want to unlock the vision, which as in the clinical setting, we don't do this. Where is this done? We can't do this. After the vision, we want to talk about energy, because I don't know if you've all noticed this, but transformation or change takes energy. It takes energy when you start a new job. It takes energy when you start a new class. It takes energy when you learn anything new. It takes energy to change habits. It takes energy to change thoughts. It takes energy to change your patterns and your systems. It takes less energy to stay the same. Change requires energy. If you think of water, I'm going to use water again. If you think of water being transformed, it is transformed through energy. If water is heated up with energy, it changes into steam, into a gas. And transformation takes energy. We have to evaluate our clients' energy. I know I talk to a lot of Nurse Life Coach Academy potential students who are drowning, who have no energy or totally burnt out. And so like the first step before you go into a new class is, yes, let's clear some crap off your plate. Let's take guilt away from when your days off, you watch TV on the couch. Like, let's celebrate you watching TV on the couch without guilt. We have to allow for energy. And so in transformation, we're constantly assessing for energy. So we have vision, we have energy. The next is going to be skill set. This is where education does come in. I'm going to go back to diabetes. Spoiler alert, most people with diabetes do know they're supposed to not eat as much sugar. They know this. That is not the problem. The problem is they can't get themselves to change. The problem is that despite knowing something, they can't implement lasting transformation and change in their behavior because it's difficult to do, because sugar is an addiction, because sugar is part of their culture, because sugar is part of their day to day, because it affects way other parts of their coping mechanisms. It's like this big thing that we simplify by, oh, just lower your sugar intake. Okay, let me just do that with zero extra thought or energy and be successful. Are you kidding me? We set them up for failure. Smokers who know that smoking causes cancer, who doesn't want to spend the money, they can't stop because of an addiction. It is not knowledge. They don't need to know. It is not a knowledge thing for most, but there are skills. So for example, what is a skill that a diabetic could learn? What would be helpful information? I'll give you two scenarios. One scenario is a diet plan that somebody else gives them that they can follow. That might work temporarily. And by the way, that's what everybody thinks that they want. A better approach would be a weekly coaching session where every week the client comes up with some swap out. So they take a look at their life, the way they eat, and they look at the moments that they're having high sugar or high glycemic index meals. And each week they pick one of those and they create their own, a new version of it. They don't lose anything. They transform what they already have. And if you did that for 12 weeks, you would have 12 instances where you could successfully swap out something for lower glycemic index without feeling like you're losing anything. That takes more energy, takes more presence, takes more curiosity. And I'm not saying it's wrong to give them a meal plan. I'm saying that it's likely not the best tool for the job. So the skill there that we're teaching our clients is the ability to change. It is a skill set to learn how to change behavior, thoughts, and patterns. That's part of what we teach as a coach. It's part of what we don't teach in healthcare. And after skill set and education, we have to talk about strategy. Like, what is the plan? We got the vision. What's the plan? What does it actually, if we break it up into doable little pieces, what does that look like? And how can we celebrate each successful step? How do we break it down so it's not overwhelming? How do we evaluate? How do we become accountable to it until we build our own internal abilities to be accountable? Shelby uses the acronym MESS, and it is mindset, energy, skill set, and strategy that's required for transformation to get to the vision. And mindset, I think the most simple mindset that we talk about is, do you believe that you can change? Do you believe that it's possible? For me, with my health journey, when my new natural doctor said to me, oh, something's going on. You're just full of inflammation. I don't know what it is, but I have so many tests that we can do. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, Laura, I want you to eat no sugar and no gluten and no dairy. And I want you to get a weekly massage. I want you to sleep as much as possible. I don't want you to worry about exercise. I want you to just lower your stress. And then I don't want you to worry about losing weight, any of that. I want you to let all that go. And then we're going to do these labs. And then we'll come back in 4 weeks. We'll see what they say. And we'll just keep making changes. But I'm going to get you better. I couldn't even begin to heal until I believed that it was possible. And I had been told for 3 years it was not possible and there was nothing wrong with me. I had been gaslit for 3 years. So a lot of times it's as the coach, we say, I see you. I see this vision. I believe in you. That already exists in the future. We're just going to uncover the best path to get there. And if you truly believe this when you're looking and being with your client, I cannot tell you how powerful it is. If you truly believe this, there's a quantum nature to this that decrees it. It's spiritual in nature. I began healing that day before all the diet change, like all the other things. Like my mindset is what began my healing. I think that mindset of believing I could heal probably started some internal healing mechanisms in my body that worked on their own. I am not kidding you. I know there's other aspects, but I can't overstate, we call it the placebo effect. Placebo is mindset. Let's leverage the shit out of that. All right. Like, let's leverage placebo all the time as our first line of defense. I can tell you one thing when I did it in PACU. I'll never forget. So I worked my favorite job I had, and I would have stayed there forever. if they paid more. And I'm glad that I left because it got me here. But I had this awesome PRN PACU job. It was about 35 minutes from my house. It was day surgery. We did orthopedics. It's mostly healthy people. And it was a really cool staff. And I worked like 7 to 3, or, I sometimes worked 10 to 7 and close it down. It was like a varying shift. I could pick up as many shifts as I wanted. I loved it. It was so fun. I really loved it. And so we would have, like you recover a 1-to-1. And so we'd have people come out and we'd recover them. And we had one nurse that just kept all of her patients way longer. So she always had less than we did. So she would always average like 5 or 6, and I'd average like 9 or 10. And it was just like always. And I often wondered what it was. Well, when she would assess their post-op pain when they came out, she would say, hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst pain that you've ever experienced in your whole life, what is your pain? And then they would say it. And then she would medicate them because they'd say a higher number because of the way that she said it. And then she would give them more medication. And then as soon as she gave the medication, she'd say, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being so nauseous, you're going to vomit right now. What is your nausea level? And then people would literally turn green. And then she'd have to medicate them with anti-nausea. And then they wouldn't get home for oral meds. And then it was just like, she just did this thing. And me, on the other hand, when they would be waking up, maybe I would say something like softly, your surgery went so well. You did so well. Everything is great. Do you have any pain at all? Do you have a little bit of pain? And as they're coming in, like out of consciousness, they might say, yeah, a little bit. I would always give them 25 mics fentanyl most of the time. Once in a while, a surgery would require more than that. But I would essentially program into their brain that they have probably not that much pain and that their surgery went incredibly well and they wouldn't experience as much pain. So then I would give them just a tiny bit of medication. All of their scores would come in low. I never asked them about nausea unless it was overt. Ever, 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 ever. None of my patients really got sick. Everybody was out in 45 minutes with an oral med on board and had better outcomes. Placebo, baby. That's placebo. Mindset. And less interventions. I was so good at that job. It really was. I didn't even know that's what it was, but that's what it was. The way that I said it, the words that I chose, the point in the journey that I asked it, the way that I intervened. When I would give the 25 mics of fentanyl, I would say, this is really strong. This is going to help so much as I'm pushing it. So as they feel the fentanyl go into their body, they think I'm giving them a really big dose. They don't know what the dose is. Their body believes they're getting a big horse dose of pain medication, and they had a better outcome. And I would listen to her say something like, I'm going to give you this much. And if it still hurts, we can give you more. And it's like, she's just constantly there in that very suggestive state between anesthesia and being awake. And I did well at that. And I think I do well in coaching with that as well. And I believe that leveraging placebo is probably more important than leveraging more information. I think leaning into transformation through that framework of mess, of its mindset, energy, what skills do they need? What information is really lacking? And what's the minimum amount of information that I can give them to be the most successful and not fire hose them? And Shelby, if you're listening to this, I am LOLing about you and I in business because I think we struggle with this. It's something that we could probably take our own medicine on. It's like, it's more important to focus on 3 things than focus on 10 things. And so it's like, more information isn't better. Right information, right time, right context, right relationship. So powerful. Now, I always talk to Nurse Life Coach Academy potential students who they love patient education. And I think what we love about patient education is we feel like the education is actually making the difference. And sometimes it is, but I can tell you, if you like patient education, if you get that itch scratched with feeling like you're really helping somebody transform, wait till you do some coaching sessions. And for those of my listeners who are with private practices right now, just do a quick evaluation of your use of teaching information and skill set. How can you make it better? How can you better tailor it? How can you frame it within a presence question? How can you seek more permission before you give it? How can you stop giving tips? How can you stop giving tips because you want to be helpful as opposed to giving information because you want to empower them to help themselves? It's a really important distinction there. All right. Well, that is my preachy story about education, my little hot take on it. I think we can do it better. I think that a tiny bit of presence goes a long way. I think that if we can see our clients and our patients as sponges and give them an opportunity to wring themselves out and make some space and become porous before we pour more water into them, the better. All right. Have a wonderful, blessed rest of your week and come back here next week. Can't wait to see you. Bye.